right now. Okay, thank you. So next slide, please. So welcome everybody. So we are very excited to present to you today this new data dashboard. And I know that looking at people who have joined the line, and I can't see all the names, but I can see many of you have been very helpful in getting us there. So you will recognize some of the slides I'm going to present. But yes, many of you who attend this webinar today, I can see you've been helping us getting there. So this is where we are now. So for the first time, England-wide primary care data is available on people who have been in contact with the NHS Check program. So we've got information on over 10 million patients. And today we're going to present the first output that we're producing from this big data set, which is the presentation of data at local level, so CCG level or local authority level, presenting people who have been patient in contact with the program, and presenting data broken down by age band, sex, ethnicity. And I've put the link below to the product online, which is on NHS Digital product website, but we'll walk you through this product in a minute. So in this webinar now, what we wanted to do is, first I'm going to remind us why the data was extracted in the first place. Then I will pass over to Adam, who is going to explain the technicality of it. How was the data extracted in practice? Then I will pass to Emma, the analyst in Public Health England, who is going to look at what the data set was, what's the strength and limitation of the data we have. And then we'll pass back to Rob from NHS Digital, who's been involved in producing the actual dashboard and who is going to give us a walk through the dashboard. After that, I'll just come back for one slide, and then we will be taking your question and answers. And obviously, if you don't have question and answer straight away, if you have some later on, you'll be invited to contact any of us if you think of question after this webinar. So next slide, please, Keighley. So what do we need? Did we need data? So a brief, I know everybody on this call must be familiar with the NHS Health Check program, but just quickly, as we know, the program is an NHS Health Check appointment is made up of 3 components. So where patients' CVD risks are assessed, and then the risks are discussed with the patient who has awareness of their risk or potential future risk or no risk. And then a discussion on probably some actions might be taken to manage the risk, the CVD risk these patients presented with. The program is commissioned by local authorities since April 2013. Before that, it was commissioned by PCT, Primary Care Trust. So you will see that we've got data for the year 2012-13 when the program was commissioned by PCT. And there is so this is a mandatory program for local authority to commission the service to their population. And the broad content of what is in an NHS Health Check is also defined in the regulation. So the NHS Health Check are delivered by general practices, but also by other providers, such as it could be a pharmacy or other third-party providers. But there was the clinical information generated by NHS Health Check should be then whoever delivered the check, the information collected during the check about risk, should be then collated in the patient's GP's records. And obviously, as we know that people are eligible to an NHS Health Check between the age 40 to 74, and they can be invited every 5 years as long as they don't have any, obviously, existed cardiovascular disease. Next slide, please. Sorry. Yeah. So why did we need this data extracted? Well, the current existing data collection, so GP providers or third-party providers, commissioners, might have very good information. So they might have, GPs would have information about their patients in their records. Third-party provider might have the information on they might look at it before sending it back to the GPs. And commissioners might, or CCGs or other party might work with the providers to interrogate this data or look at it for the purpose of audit or research. But at a national level, the only data available are the returns that local authority report quarterly to PHE, which is just the number of NHS health check offered or the number of NHS health check completed by each local authority, and that's it. There is no more granularity to it. It's just broad numbers, and these numbers obviously are produced as official statistics and are part of the public health outcome frameworks. So next slide, please. Yeah. So why did we need this data extract? So as I said, nationally, no data was available at a more granular level than the actual numbers of really activity process data. Then local area, some local area do not have access, whether CCG or local authority do not have access to data for one reason or another. So they might know how many people they offer or they provide NHS health check with, but they don't have much information about which patient are invited or what risk, what happened to this patient, what risk they're found to have. Some local area have got very good access to primary care data, we know, and they produce very elaborated and very good reports, and they can monitor really well what happened during a check. But because the data is not available nationally, it means they cannot do any benchmarking, for example. So the idea of this data extract was to answer the three needs, really. And then briefly, I won't go into too much detail, but this is the journey. So many of you on this call, again, I say, over the last 4, probably even 5, 6 years, I've been discussing about getting this data extract. And so I've put the different steps involved, which include designing business rules. So that include people from PhD, but NHS Digital, a lot of clinicians, researchers, who are used to work with primary care data to advise on what data we need to extract. There's the whole legal requirement. Obviously, you need a legal basis to extract data from primary care records. So we got a direction from the Secretary of State. Then there is the whole work from NHS Digital side to develop the specification, so translate what data we want into a query language so that the GP IT providers can know what data we want. There's another part of the legality, obviously. GP need to be able to inform their patients that the data will be extracted. So that's done using the privacy notice. Then the data was finally extracted in 2 sets, in June for 3 IT suppliers, and then February 2019 for the last IT suppliers. Then there's a lot of work from NHS Digital to receiving this massive amount of data to put it into a shape so that it becomes analyst friendly. Then PHE obviously needed a legal access to the data, and so that's through the data access request service. And finally, since September 2018, analysts from PHE and NHS Digital have been working under guidance from our governance group, so that's the Data Extract Advisory Committee, and what to do with the data, the right way of analyzing, and what was important for us to produce. So that's how we got there, and now I'm going to pass to Adam, who is going to explain how the data was actually extracted. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to skip on to the next slide as well, thanks. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes just talking about the GP extraction service, or we know as GPES in NHS Digital. So this was the process that was used essentially to extract the data. So a couple of key things that I want to point out about GPES. Firstly, that it's the only centrally managed primary care data extraction service that works across all GP IT systems at a national level. So that means that regardless of the IT system that a practice is using on site, be it the EMIS system or System 1 or any other system as well. It's compatible with that, so it means that we can extract data across the whole estate. And one thing I want to point out that it's not is that it's not a data warehouse. So sometimes people think that it's kind of drawing data out of systems and putting it onto a data warehouse somewhere for us to then access, and that's not the case. We have quite a specific reason for extracting any piece of information that we have, and so the normal course of that would be we extract it, use it for that reason, and then it's deleted, unless there's a case like with health checks where we'll be doing some further analysis on that data, so it'll be stored at NHS Digital for a bit longer for that purpose. If you want to just move to the next slide for me, thanks. I've got a bit of a simple diagram here. Catherine's gone into a bit more detail of what sits behind some of these boxes, but just to put this into context from the NHS Digital process point of view, essentially we have this quite long process of feasibility and prioritisation to see whether it's even possible to extract what people are requesting from us. And then we go into these two streams of governance. So Catherine mentioned a few of our key governance processes, like a data provision notice and a direction and what have you. And at the same time, we're elaborating the ask. So this means turning the analytical ask that we've had from an organisation into a list of business rules, essentially exactly what is it that we're going to extract from the systems in general practice. And then there's that GPES box, which is actually extracting the data. So that all then just runs automatically based on the business rules that have been created. And then the final box on data analysis and dissemination is where we're at the moment. So we've done some of that data analysis and some of that dissemination. But there's more to come and more on exactly what we've released so far in a future slide. To put GPES extracts into a little bit of context, I've got a few examples here of what GPES data gets used for. So the first one here is for payments of GPs. So I'm sure most people on the call will be familiar with the Quality Outcomes Framework, or QOF. So that annual extract and payment all goes through the GPES process. There are some processes that are used for patient care. So there's one example there, if people are familiar with that, GP to DRS. But then this extract falls into the third category here, so research and analysis, where we're interested in evaluating something in an analytical way, and we can get this extract of data that's standardised and across the national estate. And so we have a couple that fall into that category, and that's where the health checks programme sits. But for those of you, I think QOF is one of the products that we have that people are most familiar with. And so if you are familiar with that, I think of this as it's a very similar process from an extract point of view as getting the QOF data, but pointing specifically at metrics that are interesting to health checks specifically. So that's all I wanted to mention on that. I think Emma's going to talk us through some of the detail of the data that was collected.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Yes, so I'm going to give just a bit of background about what's actually in the national extract. So information was extracted on all patients that have come into contact with the NHS Health Check programme, so as recorded by a clinical code in their GP record. So time period wise, this was looking at all NHS Health Check activity up until the date of extraction. So that was at the end of March 2018. And there was an age condition applied on patients that they had to be aged between 18 and 74 at the end of March 2018. So the different types of NHS Health Check contact that were considered activity for this. So patients could have been marked inappropriate for a check, or having completed, declined, did not attend, commenced or invited for a check. Then they would have been included in the extract. Moving on to the next slide, please.
It takes a while.
Okay, right, so this slide is just sort of helps visualise so a bit more so who is and isn't included in the national extract from an eligibility point of view. So on the left we can see the patients that were included would have been to anyone that's recorded with a clinical code as having had contact with the NHS Health Check programme, regardless of whether or not they were technically eligible for the programme. And so there's eligibility conditions around sort of the age and sort of pre-existing CVD conditions. So, and then on the right, you can sort of see the groups that we won't have in our extracts, either due to them being aged sort of over 74 at the end of March 2018, having had contact with the programme that wasn't recorded in their GP record, or obviously people that had no contact with the programme. Okay, so restricting now to sort of the focus of this recent publication and the associated data dashboard. So these focus on the 6-year period from April 2012 to the end of March 2018, which was the date of the data extraction. So this covers 6 financial years. Obviously from 2012 is because that was when the rollout of the NHS Health programme completed. So the ages of patients in the publication, so we've restricted to the eligible age range, which is 40 to 74. And importantly, we've defined patients either as attendees of the programme or non-attendees. So attendees will be patients with a completed NHS Health Check code in the financial year in question. And then conversely, non-attendees will obviously be people without a completed check code, but who have some other contact with the programme in that year, and having declined, not attended, commenced, or been invited without a follow-up. And just to mention it, so because we've presented data by financial year, patients that have had contact in multiple years can appear more than once in the data. Okay, so now this slide just shows the information we have as patient characteristics from the national extract. So we've estimated age from the patient's year of birth. We know their gender, ethnic group, if it was recorded, LSA of residence, and then some information about their GP practice. Okay.
I need a book.
So it's just taking a while. Right, so yeah, sorry, just to recap on some limitations. So because of the extract, so the extract doesn't include people that patients have never come into contact with the NHS Health Check programme, or where they have and it just hasn't been recorded in their GP record. So together this means we don't have information on sort of the overall eligible population beyond who came into contact with the programme. So also because of the age condition that was applied at the time of extraction, we have some missing data for the 69 to 74-year-old age group. And you'll see in the publication and data dashboard that some suppression rules have been applied because of that. Finally, just a consideration, just to re-emphasise that patients can appear in more than one financial year if they had multiple contacts with the programme. So just to say a bit now about the choice of metrics. So in the extracts, we, as well as patients' characteristics, we extracted all of their NHS Health Check activity, their sort of risk factor information, interventions, prescriptions and diagnoses around certain time windows. So earlier on in the year, we ran a sort of session, sort of 4 workshops, sort of regional stakeholders to sort of get a better sense of sort of user needs and sort of the kind of metrics that would be useful to develop from this data. So obviously it's a big data set and it's work's carrying on. You'll see its initial dashboard focuses on sort of volumes of attendees and non-attendees with demographic breakdowns, but like going forward, we will be developing. We have a good idea now of what stakeholders need, and we'll be developing further metrics, for example, around risk factors and with deprivation breakdowns. So I'll now pass over to Adam to talk around sort of the dashboard and the various products.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. So we've got an idea here of the various different products that have been released with the release from last Thursday. So there's a link here, and I assume these slides are going to be sent around, or there'll be some way of sharing the link. So if you to follow that link, you'd find various different files that you can access. The first one is a set of summary tables, so that will show you for each of the demographic breakdowns that we've published, you'll be able to see national levels of attendees and non-attendees for each of those. There's then a host of CSV data files that are machine readable, so that if there's any more detailed analysis that you need to do that's specific to your area or specific to a question that you have, you'll find the lowest level of detail available in those. There's an interactive dashboard that Rob's going to show us in a moment. The supporting information document essentially lays out all of the essential things to know about how the data was extracted and any of those key limitations that Emma touched on in a lot more detail. So if you want to know any of the specific details of the extract, you'll find all that in there. And the final thing is the Guide to National Data Publications. And what that will show you is the known differences between this data extract and the ongoing official statistic publication from PHE that shows the kind of level of people invited and attending health checks in each local authority. You will see some differences if you look at the local authority level data in this publication and in that publication. And the guide there will explain why you'll see those differences. There are methodological reasons why you'll see some differences there, and that's all laid out in that file. So for today, Rob's going to show you the dashboard, which is kind of the easiest way to get to grips with the kind of information that's in the data. If there is a view that you can't see from this, but you think should be there, obviously do give us feedback. There's a link through that link to give us more feedback. But also there's the CSVs as well. So if it's something that you want to go away and take a look at quickly yourself, all the data's available for download too. So over to Rob.
Yeah, could we get the dashboard? Hi, so I'm going to give a tour of the dashboard, and we're going to look, if we can, from the website, just so we can kind of show you how it will look. You can access the dashboard from the website if we've got that link. Otherwise, we might have to use the slide.
Okay.
It's on the first slide of the presentation.
Do you want the actual thing there?
No, you can access it.
You go to that link, it's just one more link from there.
It's good to show it in a minute. That's it. That's fine.
Let me start sharing the screen.
We're just setting up the sharing the desktop. It won't be long. So I think it's loading now. Okay.
So Keighley's showing the publication page for the website, and if you scroll down the website, you can access the dashboard by clicking on the interactive dashboard link here in the key facts. So we're just bringing that up here now. And the reason we created this dashboard was really to give users an easy way to interact with the data that's in the publication, and also for them to really look at their own local authority and their own areas and patches, so they can kind of see the data that's in the publication and explore it further. So the first page that we have here on the dashboard is really kind of a navigation page. So it's your home page. And kind of every other tab that is within the dashboard sort of can be accessed from this sort of home page here. And we'll go through each of those tabs in turn. The first tab that we suggest you look at is the data quality. So I'll click on that now. So the data quality tab, we highlight some of the key data quality aspects within the publication that we think that users need to know. So the three key things that we've highlighted here are the participation. So users will want to know particularly about their local area, so they'll be able to select their local CCG, and what the first point here gives you is the number of practices, proportion of practices that are involved in the publication by each of the CCGs. Overall, 90% of GP practices contributed data to the project and are involved in the publication. The second point is, as Emma has talked a little bit about, is the activity included in the publication is recorded activity. So it's activity that is recorded in patients' electronic record. Anything else is, we make that point that kind of it's recorded. Anything else won't be included in the publication. And then the third point, again, that Emma discussed was there's an age suppression aspect that we have included within some of the reporting. So those three things we've brought up here. There's additional link at the bottom here that moves back to the supporting documentation and includes some references to the data quality, to the methodology that you might want to read through if you're looking closer at the data. So moving to the next tab. So this first, So this first tab is a national overview. So this is the summary picture for all the activity that we have within the publication at an England level. So we've got as Emma mentioned, we've got the attendances and the non-attendances across the financial years. And you've got the profile of the attendances across those 6 financial years, the non-attendances at the bottom, and a rate calculation as well, which is based on both the attendances and non-attendances across those years. So that's really just sort of to give you a summary of the activity that we have in the dashboard. Moving to the next tab. So we've split the activity in 2 different geographic ways. So this first geographic way that we're going to look at is based on local authority, and this is using the patient's area of residence. So the area where we've got, as Emma said, the LSOA of where they're resident, and this has been mapped to the local authority. So the data that you're seeing in this tab here is a local authority here, and you can select your local authority from the drop-down. And this tab gives an overview of the data within the publication across those financial years and overall, so hopefully gives you a nice quick sort of vignette of your activity for your patch. You can then move to the next tab, which again is local authority, so it's the same data. You're looking, or the same geographic split, but you can then look at this by the characteristics of those patients. So you can drill down, again, you can select your local authority of interest, select one of the financial years, one of the 6 financial years, and see the activity. So the yellow for the attendees and the blue for the non-attendees for each of the financial years. So we have by age band, by sex, and by recorded ethnicity as well. And then again, links to kind of the publication documentation can be found at the bottom as well if you need to reference those. Moving on to the second form of the geographic split. So this data here has been presented based on the patient's registered GP practice. So this data has been presented at a CCG level, so you can get that difference in the geography. Again, the CCG can be selected from the drop down here. And again, you get the profile for the activity that's presented in the dashboard and across the financial years. And moving to the 7th tab here, you then get that activity for whichever CCG of interest and for whichever year of interest you'd like, for the characteristics of the patients attending and not attending. So that's kind of an overview of the slides on the dashboard.
Thank you very much, Rob. So I think just to finish, before we started to have quite a lot of questions, but I just wanted to finish with, there was one slide. So obviously we're going to share the slides, and the slides include some screenshots for, just to finish, yes, going through. So yes, just to summarize really, so this is only the first step, a very exciting step where actually the data is finally out, and so those of us who've been working on this for years, it's a big achievement. But again, it's only the first step, so we need as much feedback and comments as possible. So we've got all the one you've already sent now. Don't forget that because those are experimental statistics, there is a formal survey from NHS Digital. So when you go on their website, you will be able to provide feedbacks or suggestion, and obviously there is no time limit, I think, on the survey, so we'll be monitoring this with colleagues from Digital. So we are working obviously on developing more metrics. As Emma mentioned, we did workshops with stakeholders in May, June. So we've got a list of metrics people are interested in to be displayed on this dashboard. So obviously we are working towards that. And then obviously this data set more widely PHE will be using it to add to the evidence base for the NHS Health Check program. And we've got a subgroup of our governance group, the DIA group I mentioned earlier. There's a writing group, so there's already one paper that is nearly ready to be submitted for publication, and we've got at least 2 or 3 other papers in the pipeline. So we would be looking at obviously more at England or regional data, and so it's a lot of very exciting development which are going to come from this data. So I think that's it for us. I think that's it, and I will hand back to Keighley, who is going to organise our question and answers. You stop the recording, I think.
Can stop it? You're recording, aren't you?
Am I?
Yeah, I do agree. But if you go to these 3 dots, stop recording.